All right, welcome back. So I'm on to chapter 16, nearing the finish line here, and it's a lot of storytelling. So no technical examples, really, just some DevOps war stories and interviews. And the author for this one is Noah. I'm not sure who the author was of the last one, but there's three authors of the book, so I think we have a new author for this section. So this is from Noah Gift. When I was finishing my last year of college at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, I needed to take organic chemistry over the summer to graduate on time. Unfortunately, there was no financial aid over the summer, so I had to rent a house and get a full-time job. I was able to get a part-time job at the library for minimum wage, but it still wasn't enough money. I scoured the help wanted ads, and the only job popping up was for a bouncer at a vast country western nightclub. Well, there you go. You better start doing some push-ups. At my job interview, the manager who interviewed me was about 6 feet tall, close to 300 pounds of mostly muscle. He also had a huge black eye. He told me that the previous weekend, a large pack of people had beat up all the bouncers, including him. Well, hey, that's why if you had hired that guy, that might have never happened. So you better get on that quick, because the next weekend is right around the corner. He told me it was between me and a shot putter on a track team. Oh, you want somebody that'll just throw something away? No, it's shot put. Forget about that. Shot put's not going to do anything. To help decide between me and the shot putter, he asked me if I would run in the middle of a similar fight. I told him that I wouldn't run from a brawl, and I got the job. Okay. All right. I guess that's the answer they were looking for, not... all right. Later, I started to realize that I may have been a bit naive in estimating my courage and my abilities. There were some massive wrestlers and football players that would regularly come in and get into fights, and they were terrifying people. At one concert, they called in for backup because they were experiencing trouble. A new bouncer with a mohawk and Chinese writing tattooed on his skull was my coworker for that event. Several years later, I saw him on TV winning the UFC heavyweight championship and put a name to a face. Chuck Liddell. And I don't know if people here would know who Chuck Liddell is. I know who Chuck Liddell is. He is a MMA fighter from the United States, and he's known for his accurate and strong punches. So it makes me wonder what this author Noah Gift, like, is this Noah Gift right here on the right? Like, he must be a pretty big guy too to be. So here's Noah Gift. I guess maybe he could be tall. I don't know. Oh yeah. Okay, so Noah Gift himself looks like he's a pretty tall guy. Out of the three, he's the tallest, and his upper body seems to be the most developed as well. So. Okay, well, no, that kind of puts things into perspective more. All right, so bouncing was a dangerous job. This fact became evident one day when I tried to break up a fight in which a drunk 250-pound football player was pummeling a victim in the face. I wanted to pull him off, but instead I was thrown several feet back as if the man was effortlessly punching a pillow across the room. It dawned on me at that moment that I wasn't invincible, and my martial arts skills were non-existent. I never forgot that lesson. One way of describing this overconfidence is the Dunning-Kruger effect. Oh, for wanting. Well, I mean, he needed the money, right? It's like sometimes you got to do what you got to do, and like he is, at least judging from this picture, like he's a tall guy with like his upper body seems to be developed out to some level. So like, I honestly, that's not the first thing that came to my mind when I read this was Dunning-Kruger. It was, you found what you needed, so you took it. But in the author's opinion, one way of describing this overconfidence in being able to work this job is the Dunning-Kruger effect. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias where people mistakenly assess their cognitive ability as more significant than it is. You can see this effect in practice on the yearly Stack Overflow survey. In 2019, 70% of developers considered themselves above average, while 10% considered themselves below average. What is the takeaway here? Don't trust human cognition. Trust automation instead. Trust me, I'm the boss. I have been doing this for X years, and other statements of confidence are nonsense in comparison to the brutal efficiency of automation done correctly. The belief that automation is greater than hierarchy is what DevOps is all about. And my understanding, so hierarchy. So automation is greater than like experience. It's greater than authority. It's greater than, expertise. This chapter links everything in the book about automation together by using real people and real case studies to explore the DevOps best practices of continuous integration, continuous delivery, microservices, infrastructure as code, monitoring and logging, communication and collaboration. So a lot of storytelling based stuff in this chapter, so great chapter. Film studio can't make film. After living in New Zealand for a year working on the movie Avatar, okay, so he went from being a bouncer to working on Avatar, I was in a very peaceful frame of mind. I lived on the North Island in a town called Miramar, which was a stunningly beautiful peninsula. I would step outside my door onto the beach for my daily 14-kilometer daily run. Well, there we go. That's why I got hired as a bouncer. Eventually, the contract ended, and I had to get a new job. I accepted a position in the Bay Area at a major film studio that employed hundreds of people and was located at a facility covered over 100,000 square feet. Hundreds of millions of dollars had been invested in this company, and it seemed like a cool place to work. I flew in over the weekend and arrived on a Sunday, the day before work. Now I'm just curious how many miles is 14 kilometers. Wow, okay, so 8 points. That's impressive. And that's daily? How do you even have time for that? if I wanted to run 14 kilometers in one day just for exercise, how much time in my day would I need to allocate for that?
The time you need to allocate for running 14 kilometers will depend largely on your pace.
Yeah.
Here's a rough guide based on different running paces. Beginner or casual pace. If you're running at a pace of about 7 to 8 minutes per kilometer, your run would take approximately 98 to 112 minutes, 1 hour and 38 minutes to 1 hour and 52 minutes.
Well, that's possible.
Intermediate pace. At a pace of about 5 to 6 minutes per kilometer, you would need about 70 to 84 minutes, 1 hour and 10 minutes to 1 hour and 24 minutes. Faster competitive pace. Running at a more competitive pace of about 4 to 5 minutes per kilometer, your run could take about 56 to 70 minutes, 56 minutes to 1 hour and 10 minutes. In addition to the time spent running, consider allocating some extra time for warm-up and cool-down activities, such as stretching or light walking. This might take an additional 15 to 30 minutes. Also,
Okay, so it would never take you more than 2 hours out of your day to do that. Huh, that's interesting. So 14 kilometers must not be that long. It's, what is it like? Yeah. All right, anyway, continuing on. My first day at work was quite shocking. It snapped me right out of my paradise mindset. The entire studio was down for the count, and hundreds of employees couldn't work because the central software system, an asset management system, wouldn't work. Out of panic and desperation, I was brought into the secret war room and shown the extent of the problem. I could tell my peaceful days of running casually along the beach, oh, well, that explains it too, were over. If you got a pretty solid place to run like that, it makes sense. I had entered a war zone. Yikes. As I learned more about this crisis, it became apparent that it had been a slow-burning fuel for quite some time. Regular all-day outages and severe technical problems were the norm. The list of issues was as follows. The system was developed in isolation without code review. There was, code reviews are built into like GitHub. You can set up, so that's usually one that's taken care of. If you're using another tool like GitHub. There was no version control. That's typically taken care of as well. If you have people using Visual Studio, there's built-in version control. Makes it really easy to use that. There was no build system. That one I'm a little bit not 100% sure about myself. I think that would be like Harness or Jenkins, something like that. I've definitely worked in a lot of environments with no build systems. There were no tests. Yeah, I've worked in environments with no like unit tests either. There were functions over 1,000 lines long. Haven't seen that so much, but yeah, that could be a red flag for sure. It was sometimes hard to get a hold of key people responsible for the project. I feel like I might have experienced that before. Outages were costly because highly paid personnel couldn't work. I don't think I've experienced anything like that. I mean, I've definitely experienced outages being very outages are always going to be costly, so I think just about anyone can relate to that one. Film encourages reckless software development because they are not a software company. Yeah, that I could see that being a huge problem. It's like, oh, well, we don't use software tools. We're not going to buy a license to the software tools because we're not a software company. We're making a film. But it's like, well, you are a software company because of the things you need to do. The things you are doing are overlap with what software companies do. And then remote locations had mysterious connections issues. Yeah, I could see that being a problem too. Like if if you have to stand up your own like internet connections through like wireless or something like that, that could go wrong very easily. If you have to go through third-party internet service providers, tier 3 internet service providers. They could just be really wonky. There was no real monitoring. Many departments had implemented ad hoc solutions and patches for problems. Yeah, and that's a big problem too, because now you got to tell those departments, hey, the thing that works and allows you to do your job, yeah, you're not doing that anymore. Instead, you're going to listen to me. And assuming I'm still here next week. All right, so the only fix to this standard set of problems is to start doing one right thing at a time. Oh, that's great. I like that. I like that. Yeah, so start doing what matters is that you do things right. It doesn't matter that you do everything right, but when everything's going wrong, you have to do something right. So just pick one thing you can do right and start doing that one thing right. The new team formed to solve this problem did precisely that. And I would start with monitoring, because then you can definitively say, look, everything is definitively this way, and our monitoring says so. Now, from now on, I'm not going to change much to the monitoring at all, and we're going to see just how much better this picture looks as I start tackling more things. Okay, so one of the first steps to address the challenge was to set up continuous integration and automated load testing in a staging environment. It is incredible how much a simple action like this can lead to considerable gains in understanding. So, setting up continuous integration and automated load testing in a staging environment is where they started. I would have just kind of my own intuition, which is not nearly at the level of the author for sure, would be to start with monitoring, but it looks like, so let's keep reading here. So note, one of the last and more interesting problems we resolve, surfaced in our monitoring system. After the system performance had stabilized and software engineering best practices were applied, we discovered a surprising bug. We had the system perform a daily check-in of assets as a basic health check. Several days later, we began experiencing severe performance issues daily. When we looked at the spikes in CPU on the database, they correlated to the basic health check. Digging further, it became apparent that the check-in code, a homegrown ORM or object relational mapper, was exponentially generating SQL queries. Most workflow processes only involved 2 or 3 versions of an asset, and our health check monitoring had discovered a critical flaw. One more reason for automated health checking. So yeah, that's another reason why I would think to do monitoring first. But anyways, when we ran the load test, we discovered a whole host of issues. One issue we found immediately was that after a small amount of concurrent traffic, the SQL database would flatline. We found the exact version of MySQL we were using had some severe performance problems. Switching to the latest version dramatically improved performance. With that performance issue solved and a way to automatically test whether we were making the problem better, we quickly iterated dramatic fixes. Next, we got source code into version control, creating a branch-based deployment strategy, and then running linting and testing, along with code review on each check-in. This action also dramatically improved visibility into our performance issues and presented self-evident solutions. In an industrial crisis, automation and standards of excellence are two of the essential tools you can deploy. One final issue we had to resolve was that our remote film studio location was having severe reliability problems. Staff at the remote location was sure the issue was performance issues related to our API. The crisis was urgent enough that the top executives at the company had me and another engineer fly down to the location to troubleshoot the problem. When we got there, we called our central office and had them look only at requests from that IP range. When we launched their application, there was no network traffic observed. Interesting. We checked the network infrastructure at the remote location and verified we could send traffic between the client machine and the central office. Yep. Because then that's on the local the LAN, so like it doesn't if you yeah. So you can isolate the problem down to a small segment on the network. On a hunch, we decided to look at both local and network performance on the Windows machine using specialized diagnostic software. We then observed thousands of socket connections launched over 2 to 3 seconds. After digging into the issue a bit, we discovered that the Windows operating system would temporarily shut down the entire network stack. If too many network connections spawn within a short window, the OS protects itself. The client application was attempting to launch thousands of network connections in a for loop and eventually shut off its network stack. So this must have been a while ago. Oh, this was during Avatar, the making of the movie Avatar. We went into the code and limited the machine so it could only make one network connection, and suddenly things worked. Later, we ran Pylint on the source code of the client software and discovered approximately 1/3 of the system was not executable. The key issue wasn't a performance problem, but a lack of software engineering and DevOps best practices. A few simple modifications to the workflow, such as continuous integration, monitoring, and automated load testing, could have flushed this problem out in under a week. All right, and I'm curious, during the making of the first Avatar movie, which version of Windows would have been widely used? 2009.
During the production of the first Avatar movie, which was released in 2009, the most widely used version of Windows would likely have been Windows XP. Windows XP was released in 2001 and remained highly popular throughout the decade. Although Windows Vista was released in 2007, it was not quickly adopted by many users and businesses due to various performance and compatibility
That could
issues.
have been it too.
Hence, Windows XP would have been the predominant operating system in use during the key production years of Avatar.
Yeah, so they would have been using XP. It is possible that they upgraded to Vista. In fact, that's probably likely. But Vista was like I would not be surprised if that is in fact what was happening here. Is they had upgraded to Vista, and Vista just behaved in a completely unpredictable way, and in a way that doesn't make any sense for it to behave, like protecting its network stack from too many requests. Like, I don't understand why that would be necessary. Like, maybe to prevent some sort of like obscure security risk, but I don't know. All right, so the next story is Game Studio can't ship game. When I first joined an established game company, they were undergoing a transformational change. The existing product was extremely innovative when it first launched, but by the time I joined, they had decided they needed to invest in new products. The current culture of the company was a very data-centric culture with substantial change management at every step. Many of the tools developed were logical extensions of the desire to maintain uptime for a highly successful but dying game. The introduction of new people, new departments, and new products led to inevitable, consistent conflict and also a crisis. The initial depth of the crisis became known to me even though I was working on the legacy product. As I was walking by the new products team on the way to another meeting, I heard an interesting conversation. A Spanish developer on the flagship new product caught my ear when he said during an agile stand-up, "It no worketh." This statement alone was quite shocking, but I was even more shocked to hear the response. "Luigi, this is tech talk. This is not the forum for that." Yeah, that is kind of a strange response because, agile stand-ups are all about, blockers. So he's telling you something's not working. So to just say that this is, like, first of all, no, like an agile stand-up is the forum for that. It's specifically designed to bring up blockers, like, and one of your, what was his title? He's a developer. So like if your developer is telling you something's not working during a meeting designed to have developers tell you when things aren't working, the appropriate response is not, "This is not the right forum for that," because you are very, very wrong. This is the right forum for that. You need to get his tickets put in the blocking state and get some further information on there, like what isn't working. What does it look like when it is working? How does it look different now that it's not working? Was it ever working at any point, or was it just never working? So this is what's called a blocker in an agile stand-up meeting, and it's, in fact, not only is it the forum for that, it's actually designed specifically for that. I knew at that point there was, in fact, something wrong. Later, many people on the project quit, and I took over a project that was over a year late and was on rewrite number 3 in language number 3. One of the key findings was that this canary in the coal mine developer was precisely correct. Nothing worked. On my first day on the project, I checked out the source code on my laptop and tried to run the web application. It completely locked up my computer on a few refreshes of Chrome. Uh-oh, here I was again. Yeah, so that's a blocker. Like, yeah, this is a shock for me. Like, just the kind of person I am, like, unless it was like a really messed up toxic environment, like I wouldn't let this go. I'd be like, wait a minute, no, or if I was in the room, sometimes I could be a little bit, sometimes it's, I wouldn't be able to let that go because unless I was like trying to get out of there or whatever. After digging into the project a bit, I realized there were a few critical issues. The first was that the core technical crisis needed addressing. There was a cargo cult agile process that was very good at creating and closing tickets, but that built something that didn't function. Yeah, and the funny thing is, like, it's not, and you can tell it's a cargo cult. So for people who don't know, cargo cult, one of the most brilliant men who ever lived is Richard Feynman. Lot of advanced contributions to quantum physics, to all kinds of physics. He worked on the Manhattan Project to get the nuclear weapons built, which maybe is not something to be proud of, but he came up with this idea of a cargo cult, and where it comes from is they would make like there would be deliveries to like island nations, or like, you know, like cultures or like civilizations that like needed foreign aid. It would get like a flew in on this big like cargo plane, and then so like the civilizations would like try to get these planes to come back. So like the aid workers would like come out on planes, and then they'd like stand up their communications materials, and they'd like talk to the planes. They'd like make a runway for it, do whatever they did, and get the planes in, get all the aid delivered, and then leave. So like the native people would see this, and then they'd like, you know, build their own runways. They'd build their own like special huts with like things in it that like looked like the radio gear, but they had no sense of what was actually happening, like, you know. So they would like give the appearance of like what they saw and think that was enough to actually do it. But, you know, it wasn't about how it looked. It was about the underlying technologies. You know, it could have looked radically different if you had different technological needs. So it's obvious that this agile stand-up process was that, because they're just trying to give the appearance of an agile stand-up process, but they're not actually understanding what is meant to happen during those processes. So the agile stand-up is not a tech talk. In fact, it's the opposite of a tech talk. It's a check-in. It's meant to be very brief and ephemeral. And in fact, if you're busy doing something or having a deeper discussion, you're meant to do that either after the agile stand-up, or you're meant to skip this agile stand-up as to not interrupt the deep technical discussion or work that you're doing. So it's just meant to be a check-in. And then the most important thing about it is it's meant to discuss blockers with a broader set of people. So it's like, I was looking at this thing all day, I can't get anywhere, I'm blocked. The guy across the room says, oh, well, it's because I was working on this and was blocking you, sorry, I'll get that fixed. Or, oh, I didn't hear about that, let me check my oh shoot, this thing went down, okay, it's fixed now you're unblocked. You know, that's the point. It's supposed to be rapid, quick, brief, and it is the forum to say things aren't working. Like, it's specifically designed for that. So like, not only was this a cargo cult process where they didn't understand what the agile stand-up meeting was for, they appeared to convince themselves that what it was for was the opposite of what it was actually meant for. Okay, so there was a cargo cult. Agile, yep. Build something that didn't function. Yep. One of the first things I did was isolate the core engineers from this project management process, and we designed a fix for the core solutions without the overhead of agile. Good point, because they're not doing agile. Like, it's so easy to not do it right. And when you do it right, honestly, I don't think it adds that much. I think if you do agile perfectly, it can make things a little bit more efficiently. But like, if you do it wrong, it can destroy everything. And if you don't do it at all, you leave a little bit of efficiency on the table. That's honestly how I think about it. So yeah, I definitely agree with that decision. Take away agile, whatever. Focus on the technology, get your engineers together who know how this stuff works, and let them work without any extra overhead assigned to them. And then give them a raise and a vacation. Next, when the core engine issue resolved, we created an automated deployment and custom load testing process. Because this was the top priority for the company. But the thing is, I have one more thing to say about this, because this kind of is triggering me a bit. The fact that he was even able to isolate the core engineers shows that it wasn't totally dysfunctional. Like, I can imagine, not speaking to any of my actual experience, I can imagine a situation where it's just so broken they don't even know who on the floor actually knows like the core technology, like who is a core engineer, because you'll have arbitrary job titles too. You'll have like a network engineer 6, and then a network engineer or a network specialist 2 or a network specialist 1, and it's like, oh, I'm going to go to the 6, but the 6 is all they're doing is project management stuff. They're not actually doing a lot of code stuff, or it's just such a broken environment that the process of isolating the core engineers is something that's part of the brokenness. And in fact, if you want to isolate the core engineers, now you're going to be having to reach out to people making half, the person with the principal engineer title, and that's going to be, you're forcing them to work themselves to their bones for half the pay, and then you're kind of making an embarrassment out of the ones who are supposed to have the technical knowledge. So not speaking to any of my prior experience, I can imagine situations where this was a lot more messed up than is what is here. Because this was the top priority for the company, we reprioritized the work of members of some of the other teams working on the core product to build a custom load test and custom instrumentation. This initiative was also met with substantial pushback because it meant these product managers who were working with these resources would be standing idly by. It was an essential point in the project because it forced management to decide whether launching this new product was a top priority to the company or not. Oh, that's interesting. So let me read this again. So what they did is they took the interesting. I'm going to read that whole thing again because it's just kind of not clicking with me. So next, when the core engine issue resolved, now they can load it up in the browser. We created an automated deployment and custom load testing process. Because this was the top priority for the company, we reprioritized the work of members of some of the other teams working on the core product to build a custom load test and custom instrumentation. This initiative was also met with substantial pushback because it meant that product managers who were working with these resources would be standing idly by. It was an essential point in the project because it forced management to decide whether launching this first new project was a top priority to the company or not. The final big hurdle in launching the product was the creation of a continuous delivery system. On average, it took about 1 week to make even a small change, like changing HTML. The deployment process that worked reasonably well for a C++ game that had hundreds of thousands of paying customers did not work for a modern web application. The legacy game ran out of a traditional data center. It was very different than what was ideal for creating a web-based game in the cloud. One of the things cloud computing also exposes is lack of automation. The very nature of cloud computing demands a higher level of DevOps skills and automation. Things are not elastic if it requires a human to be involved in scaling up and scaling down servers. Continuous delivery means that software runs continuously, delivered to environments where it can be deployed quickly as a final step. A release manager who is involved in a week-long deployment process with many manual steps is in direct opposition to DevOps. Okay, so this kind of isn't resonating with me. It's just not. So, I feel like I'm not understanding it very well. But anyway, the short, I guess, don't have a release manager is the key takeaway. So Python scripts take 60 seconds to launch. All right. So this is one of the stories. I'll advance the bookmark and delete the old one, and then delete the bug one. There's a bookmark that just keeps recreating itself even though it's been deleted. So I'll delete that one again. Okay, so here's the other story is Python scripts take 60 seconds to launch. And then there's more after that. You know what? I think I'm gonna end it here. I'm not sure how long it's been. 40 minutes. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have the endurance in me today, so I'm not gonna push it too hard, and I'm gonna end here. So stay tuned for the next video, learning about this problem with the Python scripts.